Hello and welcome to this first topical presentation. Today I'm going to talk to you about work. This presentation will be brief. It will be divided into three parts, into three different videos. And we will have an overview, a very general overview of the world of work, the evolution of the world of work, and we will, of course, focus on the Western world. The three parts, and so the three videos, will first have a look at a historical perspective. Second, we're going to have a look at the present day and today's issues. And third, we will have a look at the future of work. So let's start with the historical perspective. Here I want to have a look at the fact that in the 20th century, our perception of work changed drastically with the rise of labor unions, which are also called trade unions, and which started to fight for workers' rights. As a consequence, a few advantages were introduced for the workers all over the Western world. In France, in Great Britain, for example, in the US as well. One of those advantages is paid holidays. But here, be careful, there are differences between countries. For example, today, a French worker can enjoy 5 weeks paid holidays, whereas the American worker, on average, has about 2 weeks of paid holiday. Another advantage is unemployment benefits, which again are very diverse when you compare France to the UK to the US, where the UK and the US tend to have a lot less unemployment benefits than France. Pensions, for example, also were developed in the UK first and in France and the US. The minimum wage, the regulation of working hours, etc., etc. All those were implemented throughout the 20th century. With you today also, I want to have a look at two historical figures of the English-speaking world and of the turn of the 1980s. The first one is a British historical figure. Her name is Margaret Thatcher. She was a Prime Minister in the UK from 1979 to 1990, and she was nicknamed the Iron Lady. These years were also nicknamed the Thatcher years. It was a time of great social and economic change in the UK. What was the aim of Margaret Thatcher's policy? Well, it was to cut government spendings. That is to say, to have the government intervene less in the economic affairs and to go towards a governmental disengagement. The consequences were varied. For example, there was an economic deregulation. That is to say, the economic policy focused on competition, on the market economy, on the free economy. There was also a rise in privatizations. Everything that was owned by the government, for example, electricity companies, mines, etc., etc., were regularly privatized. And this had a consequence also for the workers, which was a mass destruction of industrial jobs. The UK at that time, that is to say in the 1980s, turned from an industrial economy to a post-industrial economy, that is to say a service economy based on tertiary jobs. Also, Margaret Thatcher, and that's why she was nicknamed the Iron Lady, had a very tough line against union, against terrorists of the IRA, for example, and she slowly but surely reduced and destroyed the right of striking, for example. So here are a few examples of her political actions. She became widely unpopular, especially among the working classes, and she resigned in 1990. At the same time, on the other side of the Atlantic, was the rise of the Reagan years. Ronald Reagan was president of the US. You remember that in the US, there's no prime minister. There's only one president. He was president of the US between 1980 and 1988. His policy was similar to Thatcher's. They were from the same school of economic thought. And he implemented a neo-conservative revolution in the US. Again, we have the same pattern: less state intervention and less government spending, less welfare, that is to say, less help to the workers, less benefits to families, to unemployed workers, to sick workers, etc., etc. So the focus here was self-reliance. That is to say, the people, the workers, were supposed to take care of themselves, to put money aside in the bank, to save money in case they became sick, unemployed, etc., etc. So the focus was on the individual's self-reliance. And of course, during that time, there was also a rise in the defense budget and in the space exploration budget as well. And it was the time, of course, of the Cold War with Russia, and a race towards more defense and more space exploration. So basically, from the 1950s to now, there has been an overall evolution towards economic liberalism in England, in the US. And this went in hand with the rise of a globalized economy. This has introduced changes in the way people work. There was a move from agricultural work to industrial work to now the technological revolution, which means that there are more and more service jobs. So there's been a change from the primary sector to the secondary sector to the tertiary office sector. That is to say, there are more and more white-collar workers. White-collar workers are the workers who wear white shirts, such as this one, and who work in offices. And less blue-collar workers. The blue-collar workers are the workers who work in factories, for example, and have to wear a blue uniform. These blue-collar workers, we'll see in a minute, have been relocated to developing countries. And so, as a consequence of this rise of the white-collar jobs, as a consequence of the rise of the white-collar jobs, it means that the students today need to be more and more qualified. To work in an office, you need to be more qualified than to work in a factory, for example. So more and more studies, more and more degrees are required. Let's have a look now at the place of women during this evolution. It is often said that women gained access to work thanks to World War I and World War II. But what people often forget is that the women went back home after World War II. They didn't stay employed. As soon as their husband came back from the war, they stayed at home and became housewives. This was in the 1950s in the USA, for example, the rise of the ideal family, what was perceived, of course, as the ideal family, with the husband who works and the woman who's a housewife who stays at home to take care of the house, to raise the children, etc., etc. So this was the what was seen as the ideal family during this economic boom, which is called in French les Trente Glorieuses, but that in English is called the post-war economic boom, with the rise, of course, of mass production, mass consumption, mass advertising. People were buying televisions, fridges, washing machines, etc., etc. Of course, the factories which were employed in building weapons had to be used for something else, and this helped also develop this mass production and this mass consumption of goods. The feminization of work came only later on, in the 1970s and the 1980s. Let's have a look now at today's situation and today's issues in the next video.